Hello, everyone, and welcome to another week of VNture Podcast with your hosts, Taros and MR. This week, we once again have a wonderful guest with us as PabloC returns again. We are very grateful to have him, especially for this topic of a mainstay of visual novel industry, Kickstarters. So before we dive into that, Pablo, could you please introduce yourself again?
Hello everyone, and thank you again for the invitation. I am Pablo, and I am a visual novel reader, and also I dabble a little in translation. However, this time I will be talking about crowdfunding, which is also something that I am participating in from time to time.
Yeah, and what a interesting topic it is. But let's start from the beginning. Kickstarter serves as a platform to crowdfund projects. The company's stated mission is to help bring creative projects to life. But basically what it boils down to is anybody can bring a project to Kickstarter and the customers will vote to what to fund into existence. Naturally, this became a magnet for translation projects for visual novels. And this particular aspect of Kickstarter will be something we discuss today.
Mm-hmm. Because, the typical model in the past was always for companies to raise funds through other projects and other fundraising avenues. And then once they had an estimated amount that they felt was sufficient, then they'd begin like a translation project. But Kickstarter kind of flipped that around where they can go directly to the customers and say, hey, if you give us the money now, we can offer all our backers rewards once we're done, usually in the form of like the completed projects, as well as other unique physical goods and certain collectibles. So it really kind of flipped the whole fundraising aspect on its head, right?
Yep, and just before we dive deep into what fundraising became for translation, let's briefly summarize how the translation in the official publication came to be, because we never knew what goes behind the scenes. Sometimes we get some glimpse when company says, oh, we acquired a license. Or if they made a survey, oh, this title leads in our survey for intellectual properties to acquire and translate. That was the thing they did. For example, Manga Gamer yearly has their survey, right? And based upon it, they translate or not. If we go back even further back, I think, and I'm not sure how you guys are aware of that meme, when the lower known Alisoft IPs have been acquired by Manga Gamer, in this case Beat Blaze Haruka, that was their, I think correctly, that was their first acquirement, and the meme became buy Haruka for us to translate the Rents series. Because if you support series by that developer, that gives them signal to bring more.
Exactly. If something that a certain developer is popular, it earns them money, basically. It says that titles that are other titles from this developer might actually gain popularity as well. So it's a good investment in this case. So it was a bit of a precursor of crowdfunding, actually. That's basically how the crowdfunding works, except the crowdfunding works for a specific title already. And this one was buying some other title in order to get something else.
I would like also, I know there's a lot to talk about, to cover from Sekai, project, different companies, but I want to first focus on what the creator behind the Venus Blood series said, because they went with their flagship series, the Venus Blood, and the most popular title in that series. So he went out with a bang, and he measured interest of people in the West. Do they want this kind of VN translated by the success or failure of their first project, which is contrary to what I just said. Manga Gamer gauged interest by giving the low risk option, the title that was small, easy to translate, not as huge as Runs in terms of words and translation effort. something
And
small.
probably cheaper. Cheaper
exactly.
to acquire.
Yeah, exactly. Relative to their flagship series. But Venus Blood said, no, we go with one project, the biggest one that we know of, the most popular one, and it became such a huge success, they are continuing Kickstarter to this day, with other titles in the series. So it flips the entire approach. Yeah, we'll give you the best, we'll go guns blazing, and we'll earn your trust on that, instead of, trying the customer base. Do you like Alisoft? Try it. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And in both of those cases, it worked. Those projects were both successfully funded, right? And it led to future Kickstarters and future fundings for those companies as well, right?
Exactly.
Yes, so both solutions turned out to be actually working. Although the Venus Blood solution is much better because the customer gets the best thing right off the bat, whereas in the case of BeatBlade's Haruka, they had to buy something that is maybe not that great, but this helped fund something that the customer really wanted. So I prefer the Venus Blood solution, although BeatBlade's Haruka is actually okay.
Right. I was about to say, it's like, this sounds like you're going to slander BeatBlade's Haruka.
No, it was a decent game, and the first in the series of similar titles from Alicesoft, different than the Run series. But I don't think it was a bad choice, and you could buy this visual novel just for that, without even interest in runs. So I don't think it was a scam or anything like that. So it's a business model that I think it's perfectly acceptable. You acquire something that is definitely cheaper to license, different than the flagship title of Alicesoft, definitely, but it can stand on its own, pretty much. So it is a solution. Although I see a flaw in this, because people who are fans of this specific type of games, visual novels, well, mostly visual novels because the gameplay is minimal, aren't necessarily fans of the more RPG or even strategy-focused Ren series. So I don't think they have the same audience.
Yep.
So this could easily backfire, actually.
Oh, definitely. I do want to mention that we've been talking about visual novel translations, although Kickstarter has also been a huge benefit to indie visual novel developers, especially those on the Western side of things producing OEL VNs. It's been a way for creators to try and gather some funds to put out commercial, high effort releases when they're in a limited and niche industry where it's difficult for a small time creator to, get those funds and the effort and the time and the work to set something up in the first place. There's
past,
one.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
In the past, there was a huge issue with the quality of English or Western visual novels because they were all basically at the level of a simple doujin or indie visual novel in Japan. No real backup, no real funds behind them, cheap assets. So yeah, the quality definitely suffered. But Kickstarter made it possible, I guess, to improve the quality of visuals, quality of sound effects, and so on. So yeah, I see a potential for Western visual novels as in crowdfunding, because it skips the requirement for having a company behind them, and I don't think a big company in the West is going to release a visual novel anytime soon. So I don't think there's any other option for improving the quality of Western releases.
Yeah, and I think Kickstarter uniquely could be a very nice indicator of how captivating your premise is. And this is something that can make or break English original visual novel idea. So for example, because I backed some of those, I backed Gaikokujin no Sensei. It was English original visual novel about being an English teacher in Japan. And the idea of translation or different languages as a prime problem to break that was the most captivating thing. I felt like, okay, I'll give them a chance. I'll buy on the lowest tier of pledge that grants me the game, but the concept is captivating enough that I want to try it. Because it is an English visual novel that has to deal with barrier of communication between two different people speaking different languages. And like, yeah, let's try it. That seems the best. And this is something that is so uniquely on Kickstarter, based upon how many pledges you get. Concept is. Does it resonate with viewers? Do they think it can work? Yeah, and if so, they will back it. If not, maybe the premise itself wasn't that great.
I do. That's a good point to mention, because not every Kickstarter campaign is successful. Sometimes they don't reach their goals, and I think that's more a message to the consumers as well, who tend to act like Kickstarter is a shop where they can go buy or pre-order their copy of the game. And, there are always risks involved with Kickstarter. You're putting in your money to help fund this. There's no guarantee that it'll be successful, or that the journey will be smooth, or that you'll get exactly what you thought you would have gotten on day one. There's a lot of risk involved in Kickstarter, because anyone who's been involved in development knows that things never go smoothly. I mean, Pablo, you've been involved in the, translation side of things. And I mean, that's one aspect of developmental work. And of course, you've run into plenty of snags. And so even if you're a company that tries to be upfront with all of your customers at day one, you can't always guarantee that they'll get the best experience.
Yeah, it's always a risk when you are backing something that essentially doesn't exist yet. So yes, that is definitely something to consider before touching any Kickstarter projects. And also, you can be promised one thing, but things can change along the way, and the end product can include something that you don't want. Maybe the translation will end up being a little censored to meet Western sensibilities. Maybe it will be released on Steam, so some content will be cut from the translation, will be replaced with content from the PlayStation release, for example. There will be a patch that will replace the content, and so on and so forth. So it can be quite complicated, especially since Kickstarter and Steam as well are platforms that are very hostile towards any mature anime-style content. So especially Steam, but Kickstarter isn't much better in this regard. So it's not that optimal for 18+ projects, because they need to be censored, and you can't even properly discuss things on Kickstarter, because there is always some kind of moderation that can look at something and ban the entire project because of inappropriate content. So yeah, it's not an optimal platform for these purposes. Although Venus Blood somehow managed to successfully deal with all of those problems, so it can be done.
Yeah, it can be done. Although, to be fair, they had to change the title of the Venus Blood Hypno to Hollow, right?
Yes, apparently hypnotism is some kind of a taboo for whatever reason. I have no idea why, but yeah, censorship never makes sense. So yeah, I'm not surprised.
Whack.
Although I have to be Venus Blood, they picked a really good word to represent instead of Hypno. Hollow is really, really well done when it comes to title. It represents the concept really nicely. And oh my god, such a can of worms you opened with the adult content. I think we should start with the big one, and probably still the biggest Kickstarter success for the translation has to be Muv-Luv. Oh boy.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. Love, Extra, Unlimited, and Alternative.
Yes, this Kickstarter, I think, really put another perspective on translation Kickstarters, because they weren't such a big thing in the before this one was successful. But when this one blew up, well, it showed that there is a huge market for translations in general. I think it gave some popularity to the platform and to the model of crowdfunding translations. Who knows? Maybe it's the reason why we have so many translation Kickstarters right now.
Yeah, and I think it was a shining beacon of hope, because I feel like around that time there were a lot of probably still ongoing Kickstarter horror stories in regards to translation. But before we go to the horror stories, let's finish with the Mublov. I am so sad that I did not back Mublov enough to get the codex. I want my big book of mechs with all the world building in. I did not get it, as I am sad.
Yeah, you can regret this because this book is incredible.
Don't!
Oh my
No,
goodness.
don't say it like
How
that.
could you, Pablo? But yes, Mufflove, that Mufflove Kickstarter obviously had the goals of translating the script into English, but they also had, stretch goals for more content translated and more digital goodies and physical goodies as well. And the development team for that was very communicative with the customers. And I remember they sent out a few surveys. They asked what artwork you wanted on the collector's box. They gave out all of the goodies in, decent time frames. Of course, there's delays. There's going to be delays with every Kickstarter, but they were on top of things pretty much.
Oh man, now that you remind me of that, that's true. Not only inside the game, you had an option whether or not you want to see the altered and changed to English CGs or the originals. The same applied to physical goods. You are correct. Holy hell, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was a thing actually.
Holy.
And I want to say, off the top of my head, I believe there were, about a year plus long delay for the entire project, because I think they anticipated using the fan translation as a base and just cleaning it up from there. But they realized that this wasn't the best and they were just going to have to start from scratch. And so even though that's surely a completely different scope of what they were planning to do for this entire Kickstarter campaign, they still, acted speedily and didn't, and they were open about it to the customers and didn't put any pressure on them. So overall, it was a great experience.
Yeah, I don't mind delays if they mean that the product will be better and if there is a proper communication, absolutely no problem there. I expect all of the Kickstarters to be delayed for one reason or the other. So I don't expect them to arrive on time. But yeah, as long as I know what's going on, as long as everything is properly communicated, I know why the delay happened, as long as there is a proper explanation, I'm perfectly fine with that. But that's not always the case, of course, and I'm sure we will reach the part where we will be talking about the stellar treatment of Kickstarter projects. But yeah, Mublov is pretty much exactly what the Kickstarter should be like.
Yeah, before I continue on with this topic, I just want to say to our listeners, okay? I'm sorry, but I agree way too much with Pablo to have any other discussion and clashes of opinion. It's just, so far, I agree with everything he says, and I think that won't change. And speaking of the delays, I want to elaborate on that. I much prefer this, what happened with Mublov, and delaying the release by a year instead of after the fact, after it's quote unquote delivered. Now they run a retranslation effort, which would be from some of those Kickstarters. We'll just go into momentarily.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, and that's again something that I will agree with. So we'll be agreeing with each other a lot. I have
Probably.
a feeling that this will be a theme of this conversation.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't gotta apologize to our viewers.
But I thought we would have some more different opinion, but no way. They agree on too much.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but speaking of Mublov, they also, due to their success, they funded the Photon Flower, Photon Melodies and Photon Flowers fan discs. or sequels. It's so weird because some of those are sequels, some of those are spin-offs or other side stories. And I specifically mean Photon Flowers and Photon Melodies because they are mixed together with a bunch of side stories, etc., which is something completely different with Total Eclipse and Schwarzenmarksen. Okay, needless to say, their success enabled them to port even more. And I'm
more
all
content.
for it. Exactly, I'm all for it. The worst feeling you get is when you get a translation. For example, I'll bring up Happy Maya. I love that title, and it did not sell enough to get a fan disc. Give me the fan disc.
That's sad.
Right?
Although, I think, now we're at the point where I gotta say, there is something worse than that you described, and that would be giving your money over to the Kickstarter fundraising and getting strung along for years with no end goal in sight. And I think that's the number one poster child of this is probably the Shale no Kuni translation Kickstarter run.
Yeah.
I really feel bad for everyone who translated this because how long are we at this? It was funded at the end of 2016. It is now 2023. It is still not released. There have been constant status updates of we're almost done. We're going to release it very soon. And they give a time frame like next summer or in 2 months. And then we get closer to the date and they're like, oh, we discovered there's a fatal bug. We got to fix this. Sorry, guys. And then again, we're almost done. It's like, oh, there's another bug. Oh, we're almost done. Oh, there's another bug.
Yeah, but...
And it'd be one thing if like, okay, see, that happens a lot, especially in any sort of computer science industry, But... there's been a strong lack of communication and a lack of showing any efforts or fruits of their labor. So there's a lot of doubt as to if anything has actually been accomplished or if people just got scammed out of their money or something.
Yeah, I really dodged the bullet on this one. I was about to back it, but the rewards weren't anything special, and I have already read the fan translation, I think, earlier. So I wasn't that eager to actually buy it because I already knew the story. So I said I'll skip this one. And damn, that was a pretty good decision.
Oh, man, yeah. Which is a shame because, Shale no Kuni, I also read the fan translation, and it's one of my favorite VNs. It's like, I really like it. I think it's definitely, something that deserves to be called a classic. But whereas other VN classics like Muv-Luv or like Fate series have just continued to build off their brand and gain recognition, especially in the West, all we can say for this is just one failed Kickstarter that continues to lead its people on. Like carrot on the end of a stick.
Yeah, but at the very least, please tell me, do they update until recently? Do you get constant updates all the time? Even now? Or did they went radio silent?
I'm not back, so I just have to go off what gets posted on social media and whatnot. But they used to have monthly updates, and then that slipped into just nowadays. I want to say it's something like 2 updates a year.
I see. Okay, so there's something there, however small.
Oh dear, that's copium.
I mean, it is copium. Okay, I get it, it's copium. And this is another Kickstarter that I dodged a bullet on, so high five, Pablo. But but now I need to talk about Soulpress, okay? Because we have two examples of Soulpress. One, they successfully funded and finished translation of Newton and the Apple Tree. And the second part is the Irotodori no Sekai. Is that? Oh yeah, that's correct. Which they successfully funded, but since their how can I say it? Soulpress complete disappearance, there's nothing, no updates on the project. And I feel that that's even worse than being strung along for the ride, because now I don't know what happened. And funnier still, I remember vividly Irotodori no Sekai because the Soulpress guys were very dispirited because that was one of the few Kickstarter projects I backed that got funded in the last seconds of its run. And I specifically remember that because they had like by-minute updates on Twitter or something like that, and I followed that until the release. Okay, and funny story. Okay, I was in my house that day. I was riding on a stationary bike. I look at the Twitter in real time, and then in the last minute, around, let's say, minute and a half before it ended, I increased my pledge while exercising on the bike, okay? I was that invested for it to succeed, okay?
Your heart was racing.
Yes, in multiple ways, yeah.
Goodness gracious.
So that I vividly remember. And holy hell, that was after Newton, and I read Newton, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. It's not the... I had some flaws with Newton, but ultimately I like the title. Let's back another one.
Ouch. But yeah, for anyone who's not aware, Soul Press got shut down by the government because they never paid their taxes. And apparently, from rumblings from other people, they didn't really pay anyone.
Holy.
They've gone complete radio silent, and no one can reach them, and they're gone, I guess. So yeah, which is a shame because, like you mentioned, with their Kickstarter projects, those were funded by the people, and they're kind of expecting some sort of progress. And it happened with, I think you mentioned Newton and the Apple Tree.
Yep.
But not for the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, geez. That is a shame. Sometimes that happens, especially when you hand over the money first for something that does not exist yet. That's always the risk you got to take as a consumer.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another bullet that I dodged, although I was almost on the verge of backing this up. Because, I had no interest in the Newton visual novel, but Irotori no Sekai actually has a very nice art and very nice music, so I was kind of interested in that. But somehow I didn't back it in the end. I don't even know why. I don't know, intuition. Yeah.
Your danger sense went off.
Yeah. Maybe I read something about the translation. Something was off in the Newton visual novel about translation. I don't know, because that's the easiest thing to discourage me from giving anyone some money. If there was something possibly not so great with the translation, I probably got discouraged that way and decided to never back them, no matter what. So I think that was something like that. Although maybe I'm mixing it up with some other company.
I think you might mix it up because I feel like I talked to you specifically in regards to Newton because they introduced a honorific checkbox. So a toggleable, whether or not you want honorifics to be in the title or not. That was something in Newton.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that wasn't, definitely there wasn't that because, that's... visual novels with problems usually don't do that.
Yeah, right?
So that's something different, yeah.
Okay, maybe something else, but not, at the very least, I don't think it was the Newton itself.
Yeah.
But
something was off, I don't know.
Probably.
Sixth sense or something.
Yes, Sixth Sense, exactly.
Although, I just realized that Kickstarters can kind of go the other way in that I believe Newton and the Apple Tree is completely delisted from all stores because the license has run out with Soul Press going out of business. Yeah. So if you've backed the Kickstarter, or I suppose if you've bought it before on any other storefront, you can still download it. You can still, have the program saved in your computer and enjoy it. But as of now, if you don't and you want to try to legally acquire an English copy in the West, you cannot. So that's one way Kickstarter backers stay winning.
Exactly. And to elaborate on that, for all our listeners, if you go now to VNDB, look for the Newton and Apple Tree, go to the 18 plus release or the all ages for Steam, click any of those links and you'll see those got removed completely. The links still there.
Those storefront pages are down.
Yeah, exactly. I checked my Steam account because I got a Steam key in addition to the backer key to download for the Newton. I still have the Newton, but the store page doesn't exist because it got delisted. So exactly as Tauros said, I have access because I have it in my account, but otherwise no one can buy the another copies. So there's that. And speaking of unavailability, the similar thing happened with Muwloof in the 18 plus patches when they switched the publisher, because at some point the company, the developer, Agesoft changed the publisher, something like all the IP holder rights. And now the 18 plus patches aren't available anywhere else, except for those who backed the Kickstarter.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I wasn't really following on that ever since, the release. But apparently, like, the 18 plus patch for Muwloof Alternative was only available to Kickstarter backers?
I think...
Was it ever available after the Kickstarter, like when it was commercially released on Steam?
I think what happened, right, is they got released on Steam, and they sent all the Kickstarter backers what they called a director's cut, right?
Yes.
So you had access to that. Now, they never had their own official site to host those patches, so they weren't distributed from that. But they did say that they're looking into that. I remember something like that they specifically talked about it. But the moment the publisher or the IP rights holder changed, those talks disappeared. So the intention changed, I feel. And now...
the new publisher probably wasn't all that eager to be associated with adult content. So
exactly.
They just... Yeah.
Or they probably saw no need to either, because they're like, this won't make us any money, why bother?
Yeah, that too.
Maybe, yeah, that's true, because the Altered Fabled that got incorporated into, oh my god, it was Photon Melodies or Photon Flowers, one of those two English releases bundle. Yeah. It has no 18 plus English version, even though in the Japanese it is 18 plus. So sadly, this is the one that we took an L on. We don't have the full version of the Altered Fable, because those were released under the new IP holder.
Ooh, crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. So even a very successful Kickstarter can end up in the very wrong place at some point.
Yeah.
When rights change, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. MR, you mentioned there was one Kickstarter for Libra of the Vampire Princess?
Yes. What about Libra?
No, because I happen to know about that Kickstarter only because it was running alongside the Root Double Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And it's a funny story to illustrate how there's more to this whole process than just the translation stuff. Root Double is it's a plot-focused VN, kind of actiony, that involves multiple characters, multiple points of view, fairly long. And as I understand it, Libra of the Vampire Princess is kind of slice of lifey with some fantasy aspects and cute girls in a wild, ridiculous situations. Root Double was struggling on its Kickstarter funding. Mostly because I'm not too clued in about the stuff, but apparently the backer tiers were pretty crappy, and there wasn't much incentive for people to donate more other than just the bare minimums. And so it was struggling just with outreach too.
Yeah.
Whereas Libra of the Vampire Princess was apparently a fantastic Kickstarter, and they were regularly sending out email blasts to people.
Yes.
And they were commenting and responding, and of course they were getting way more donations. And Root Double just barely made it on like the last few days or whatever to get properly funded. And everyone was pointing out the difference between like this plot gay, Root Double, awesome VN, and then this slice of lifey Libra the Vampire Princess just running circles around it.
Yep, exactly. And it's funny because this is one of my first Kickstarter backings. And I remember vividly that time that I had to choose between Root Double or Libra. And I chose Libra just because, exactly as you said, they had so much better communication than the Root Double. And kinda I like fantasy more, okay? Oh, okay. Fine.
Oh, and this is the first thing I think that where we'll differ, because I actually picked root double. But I did this for a very different reason than focusing on plot or something. I picked this one because at that point, it was one of the first Kickstarters that I backed. I didn't really trust the Kickstarter to be a good platform for adult content. So I picked something that was all ages to begin with because there was a guarantee that it will not be, well, it was less likely that it will end up censored than something that was 18 plus. So I didn't trust this part of the Libra Kickstarter, that they will do the adult content right. So at this point, I was a little wary
Skeptical.
of those.
I see.
Yes. So I picked the safer option.
I feel like you have such a good instinct because ultimately, sadly, I feel like translation of Libra was very poor. It's just something, and it says a lot. I don't speak Japanese, so I cannot tell you whether or not they translated correctly from Japanese to English. But the structure of sentences was sometimes so weird. I found quite a lot of typos. It's like it was very middle of the road, I would say, sadly. And this is something that I shared with you guys during the preparation. On a certain Halloween day, I got an email from Libra that they went into red. They went into bad situation for the company after they sent out all physical copies of their merchandise from Kickstarter. So they...
And yeah, they were in the red means they were losing money. They were in the negative.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because when you mentioned the problems with the script and the translation, because it's sounding to me like this was a problem with money. Like they just didn't have the funds to do a proper job in the QA pass and editors.
And that's not even the end of it all. Because after that, or maybe even in that email, they mentioned that they are gathering support and money. Yes, they gathering money after the project is concluded for retranslation. Yes, project.
Oh boy.
And I don't think they ever finished that. They got one route retranslated, and I heard it's pretty nice now. But holy hell. That was a mess.
Who would have a patience to retranslate the entire visual novel from scratch, right?
You tell us, Pablo. But yes, I mean, again, these companies are in it for the money, and they're hoping to make money. And if they don't, they got to do something else, or they close up. And that's just the practical side of the VN industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there is one more danger associated with Kickstarters or other crowdfunding platforms. The project begins and estimates its costs at some point. Then development takes a year, 2 years, 3 years. The longer it takes, the more problems it can bring, because the exchange rate of different currencies change, shipping costs can change, situation in the world can change. So there's a lot of things that can happen that can seriously affect the end cost for the company. Shipping costs, I think, are the biggest problem here, because those can change quite drastically. And when you are shipping hundreds of packages, and you estimated the old shipping cost, and now it's like 50% higher, well, you will run out of money. There's no way around it.
Yeah, it's exactly as you say.
But yeah, best of luck to all Kickstarters run in the future. It's a dangerous road. It's never for certain that things will turn out well. So all we can do is try to support whatever projects we enjoy and hope things turn out for the best.
Yep, exactly.
Exactly.
On that note, I think we'll have to end our episode here. I hope all you listeners enjoyed us discussing the finer points of Kickstarters with visual novel industry. And of course, I want to thank you, Pablo, for joining us for this episode again. I hope you had a blast.
Yes, I enjoyed it very much, and I thank you for inviting me here.
Yeah, I also want to thank Pablo. This is probably the topic I had in mind for the longest time to bring you on, because we often talk about those Kickstarter projects we backed, we didn't back, we go back and forth. So thank you very much for accompanying us on this topic. And I also thank for everybody listening in, and see you next week.
See you next week.
See you. Goodbye.